I just want to talk a little bit before we talk about curriculum, is who needs to choose curriculum. So school at home or distance learning options, curriculum choice is not required for that. The school programs are created by the school teachers, the material is provided by the school, and then the parents administer the school program at home. There are some things you need to know about that curriculum. When you do that sort of curriculum at home, it tends to be a bit more onerous on the parents. There is little flexibility in terms of the program content, the delivery, and the timing of the delivery. So it's more rigid than in a traditional homeschooling setting. There also tends to be a lot more reporting that tends to serve the school better than serve the school as compared to serving the parent and the child. And the goals are set by the teacher in the school for each subject. And just be aware that there may be less time for extras than if you choose a traditional parent-directed homeschooling format. In homeschooling or parent-directed education, the programming is created by the parents to serve their child. And it serves their child best in the home environment. The educational resources are chosen by the parents, and they're driven by the student needs and abilities and the parents' educational desires for their children. When you choose the curriculum for your child, you can focus on your child's strengths, build on their weaknesses gently, and watch them flourish. There's great flexibility in content and delivery when you choose the materials that you will, not just the materials, when you choose a homeschooling parent-directed environment as compared to an online or school-delivered program, there's much more flexibility. The goals you meet are yours. Your specific family needs can be met. And there's less time required to complete the work and more time to explore a student's individual interests. So many people say, well, what do kids in school learn? How am I going to teach the same things? And does it matter if I teach the same things that they're learning in school? Well, if you're concerned about what your child would be learning in school, each province is going to have available on their provincial websites a provincial scope and sequence for each subject. So what that means is you can go on and say grade 4 math and look at the concepts that are typically covered in your school, in your province for that grade and that subject. So you can check out your province's website to look at all of that material. Now, be careful because sometimes there can be a lot of words, so it can have limited value when you go there, but I do encourage you to check out what your province has your students learn if that is a concern of yours. If you're saying, I need to make sure that I'm teaching similar things to what they're learning in school. What I want you to think about is that many provinces will have the same curriculum, but depending on the school board or even the school that your student goes to, they will use different resources to meet the curriculum requirements. So just because you are using books that are different than what may be used in your school, it doesn't mean that you're not going to be fulfilling curriculum requirements. And another thing to consider is that there are different goals in each province. So if we take a step back and look at the big picture and say, well, will my student be able to get into college if they desire so? Well, colleges don't just accept students from their province. They will accept students from all across Canada and internationally. So they're not going to require the exact specific curriculum or resources that your province used in order for your student to be able to attain admittance to a post-secondary institution. And then finally, you may want to set goals for your kids that are different than what the school may be doing. Schools really are set up to serve a lot of children all at once. And you now have the flexibility to serve your family in your environment, and you can do that in very interesting and creative ways. So homeschool development, it's very important that you decide what is most important to teach so that your child can succeed in life. Developing your program, that's the main questions that you want to ask yourself. What does my child need to be able to succeed in life? You may want to consider your worldview, your perspective on life when choosing curriculum. You'll want to look at character development. It's important not just when we educate our children, not just to look at the academics, but it's important to also look at the character development. Who is your child going to be when they are done their education? And then the academics, of course. What are the subjects that we are going to tackle? I talked about worldview. And so what is worldview? Well, worldview is your beliefs and your convictions and how those form the basis of your decision making. All of us have a perspective that we come from and things that are important to us when we're making decisions. Unbiased education is an illusion. Every curriculum, every program of studies, every teacher has a perspective from which material is presented. So everyone has a bias in creating material and in presenting it. You need to choose from which perspective, which worldview you will teach your children. Where do you place your value? Is it most important to you that you have something set up so that your child may return to school? There's a lot of conversation around that. I want to homeschool right now, temporarily. So if that's important to you, then you will choose some of the things you do around that as your primary focus. Your faith may be very important, and so you want curriculum that's consistent with your Christianity, with your secularism, whatever your faith may be, you will want curriculum that's consistent with that. You may have a passion for certain special subjects, social justice, world politics, history, environment. These things are all things that you want to consider when you're figuring out how you're going to and what you're going to teach your students. Character. I'm going to look at some character qualities as well. Like I said, being at home provides a unique opportunity for us to develop our children and develop their behaviors, their personality qualities, their values, their virtues. And so you can spend more time on that as you're home educating. Who do you want your child to be? Do you want them to have the virtues of patience, kindness? Maybe humility is important to you, or purity, self-control, charity. Maybe you want a child who's very charitable with the things that they own, or you're desiring to raise a diligent student and adult. There are lots of character qualities that now that you're homeschooling, you can really spend some time thinking about. And I would encourage you to write down what character qualities you desire for your student. Do you want your child to make decisions that center around ethics and morality, that they be an ethical and moral person? Do you want them to be a socially just person or politically aware? These are many things that you can work on when you're homeschooling. And an engaged citizen. It's very important that we be engaged citizens, and you can develop that in your students. And then finally, as you're developing your program plan, the academics, the knowledge that you will work on that's necessary for your student to become a productive citizen in our world. Academics is the third component. It's that knowledge component. What subjects will I teach? So if we're looking at academic development, we can look at core subjects. What are the core subjects that we're going to look at? We're going to look at English. We want our children to be able to read, to write, to spell. These are all very important skills. Math, we want them to be able to do math, science, history, and geography. For some people, other languages is very important. So you want to be able to include that in what you're doing. Arts and music are a component of education that you may have more time to explore and spend time with when you are homeschooling. So how are you going to teach all this? I just dumped a whole bunch of stuff, and I think many of you may be feeling even more overwhelmed right now. Hang on, because you don't have to feel overwhelmed with this. How are you going to teach all of this? Homeschool.today looks at various educational methods. So if you go to the website of Homeschool.today, you will see that there are many approaches that you can look at. So Charlotte Mason, for example, is a beautiful, gentle way of approaching homeschooling that has a lot of journaling, that has a lot of nature, a lot of science, a lot of exploration. You may be interested in a classical approach where you focus on the great books and you work on memorizing, where you work on communication, on children be able to talk deeply about the subjects that they're looking at. Eclectic approach, which is kind of the way I did it, where you take a piece of everything that you like and you just sort of mesh your homeschooling around that. All of these are various formats that you can use, and you can use bits and pieces of each format to help you in your homeschooling. So like I said, I encourage you to go to the homeschooling.today website and explore those. So how do I choose one of those formats? Well, we also have a learning preference quiz on our homeschool.today website. So if you take that learning preference quiz, it will help to direct you into one of these methodologies that seems to suit you best. There's a number of questions that you take, so just click through those. You can try it a number of times and see if, well, what if I think about this? And what if I change this? To see if there are several options that may be available and for you to look at and consider. So now we'll look at that sort of a way, methods to teach, ways to teach your students. But what about making those curriculum choices? How are you going to do that? Well, first of all, you may want to, I would encourage you to understand your provincial requirements, the legal requirements within your province. If you go to the homeschool.today website, you will be able to click on a free overview of provincial and territorial forms, legislation, and information that may tell you if there are certain requirements that you must meet under the legislation in your province. In addition, HSLDA has for their members detailed summaries of the laws of each province through the members website. So you can purchase, that's one of the benefits of purchasing one of our memberships, is that you have access to that material. So as a home educator, some people may not be interested in investing a lot of money at this point, or you may not have a lot of money to invest into homeschooling. Homeschooling doesn't have to be expensive. There are a lot of free online resources available. Printable online materials, apps that you can use. You can go to the library, you can use their resources, dollar store workbooks, or big bulk store complete curriculum in a year, and use those as the basis of your studies. So you don't have to spend a lot of money. And there are a lot of experienced homeschoolers who are willing to sell their resources. So secondhand resources are available. There are a lot of buy and sell homeschool websites. So I encourage you to look those up, the buy and sell homeschool websites. So let's get into some nitty gritty now. Reading, writing. What are some curriculum ideas? Well, learning to read. So there's going to be a bit more detail in this than in the previous section. The previous section tried to establish a perspective for you to have when you are considering which material you will buy. So now we're at which material will I buy? So learning to read. There are many resources that home educators have used. All About Reading is a very popular one right now. I use Teach Your Child to Read in 100 Easy Lessons. Many people have students who just seem to learn to read on their own. There's lots of reading apps. And what I've done here is I've tried to highlight free and inexpensive alternatives with a star. So if that's something that's important to you, then please feel free to look at those. Many of these other resources are not expensive either, but these are especially inexpensive, the starred resources. Reading. Okay, I just want to sit here for a while in the reading section, because to me, this is the core and the foundation of what a good homeschooling program looks like. If you have ever been to a homeschooler's home, you will notice a lot of books. There's a lot of reading that goes on. I encourage you to read to your children. Your children can read at a level here, but their comprehension is here. So when you read to them, you can read much more complex, much more difficult books, much more involved books than they could read on their own. We used to spend the bulk of our days reading, with me reading to our children, with them listening to audiobooks, with them reading to themselves. I really encourage you to do that. Novels, poetry, short stories, news articles, and plays are actually one thing that until they get older, I would encourage you just to have them watch those, because they were created to be watched, not created to be read. So watch good plays with your students. Writing, how do you encourage your student to write? It's interesting, in Charlotte Mason and the classical approach to education, copy work is emphasized a lot, and that is not something that most students have a lot of familiarity with anymore in school. The idea of copying good pieces of work. When you do that, when you have your student do that, you can work on so many areas. A student who copies a paragraph will copy the punctuation appropriately. They will copy capitals and small letters appropriately. They will learn spelling from copying words. Copy experience is a very good skill, and it costs nothing to do. All you have to do is get a good book that is written well and have your student copy a sentence, a paragraph, depending on the age of your child. This can go for a very long time. And they will also learn good grammar in doing this. You can also do things write to family, write to pen pals. Those are very inexpensive ways to have your child write. An excellent program that many home educators take advantage of is the Institute for Excellence in Writing, an inexpensive writing program by a dynamic presenter, Andrew Pudewa. He keeps his students engaged, makes writing so simple. So if you want your child to learn how to write an essay well, this is an excellent resource. You may also purchase some grammar workbooks to study if you'd like. That is completely up to you. Spelling, lots of online spelling apps. Again, that copy work, you choose words to study. If a child is writing a letter to their pen pal and they get that a word spelled wrong as they send it, then you just write those down on a list and you have your students work on those. That's where your spelling lists can come from, is from their own personal writing. Latin roots sounds daunting, but it's really not. It's really an amazing way to develop a student's spelling, because if you know that the Latin root bio, B-I-O, means body, means the human body, then you will always be able to spell words that begin with bio. Or I'm trying to think of some photo, like photosynthesis. P-H-O-T-O, photo is the root or is a word that means light. So now your student will be able to understand that photo and everything they do means light. So Latin roots are really a fun thing to learn, an interesting thing to learn, and they become very valuable in post-secondary studies as well. And you can start that very young with your children. There are multitudes of curriculum available in spelling that you can choose from. Math and arithmetic ideas. Again, I think actually the homeschool environment does an exceptional job on their math curriculum. I love so many homeschool math programs because they are actually laid out so that children can learn relatively independently. Some of them are set up so that the child can learn completely independently. So some of the teaching textbooks is an online program where the child is taught, does their work, it's corrected, and they can do it all the way up to calculus, high school materials with little involvement required by the parent. So if you have limited time, you may have a lot of children, or you may be a single parent or a working parent. Online programs such as that may be good. Abeka, Matthew C., the manipulatives, Bob Jones University, Saxon Math, Singapore Math. All of these are really solid math programs. I love math, and I love math that is good math. I use Singapore Math, but I only use the teaching material. One thing you want to know is that don't ever be tied to your curriculum so much that it becomes a burden. One thing that I have found in many math curriculums is that it teaches to ad nauseum, to where children don't want to do it anymore. So often I would have my children just skip every other question, or just do the new concepts and then every other question in the reviews. So, and sometimes I didn't even use the extra workbooks that could have been an option for programs. I just use the basic programs or the basic, some of the basic questions. So one thing to know is once your child attains an understanding, a conceptualization of math concepts, you can move on. You don't have to flog that horse till it doesn't want to learn anymore. Lots of programs. If you're on a budget, lots of online sheets that you can use. You can supplement math as well with math games, with logic puzzles, with geo boards. These will help your child's critical thinking and math conceptualization. And when they're in high school, if you use some of these advanced programs, you can also use Key or YouTube to supplement learning if you're having them write your provincial grade 12 exams, just to make sure that they know all the material and that they are ready to write those exams. Lots of good supplemental material. And then real life math. Real life math is very doable for children who are young. You can do it almost exclusively. You can teach your children math by shopping. So you may have them look at things online and have them help you calculate how much things will be online. I was actually, this is going to sound awful, but I was actually very sad when the GST went from 7% to 5%, because 7 times tables are not often used. And the GST being 7% allowed my children to use their math skills with the 7 times tables a lot. Now, I don't want taxes to go back up to 7%, the GST, don't get me wrong on that. But it just shows that you can use what we have. Don't ever let your child purchase something without calculating tax, not only because it's a good idea, but also because it's good math skills. Cooking, fractions are used all the time in cooking. Painting, figuring out what the area of a wall is, figuring out how much seeds you need to purchase for your lawn, doing math games with cards. I used to have competitions with my son, and here's a tip. Sometimes competitive children, my son was very competitive, they love the challenge of competition. So we would put cards down, and together he would have a stack and I would have a stack. We'd either add them up and see who could add them faster, or we would lay them down and see who could multiply them together faster. Lots of fun ways to do math and inexpensive. Science curriculum ideas. There are lots of science programs that you can use. Apologia science textbooks, lots of videos, Khan Academy, books you can get from the library. One thing that I would suggest is that a good experiment book that's age appropriate for your child is really a great thing to have, because you can spend a lot of your science programming time just on doing really fun experiments with your kids, and they will learn a lot by doing that. How-to books, an amazing, amazing resources. YouTube videos, kids can learn so much just by having questions and trying to find those answers. Again, our library or your public library are good resources for those. Everyday science application, gardening, building, sports movements analysis. I used to do the bulk of our science in the summer because I found summer much more conducive to experimenting outside. Pond science, plant science, there's animal science, dissection. We used to do lots of dissections that were quite informal. You can do a lot of science in very interesting and fun ways. History and geography. I used to hate history. Oh, I hated it. Now I love it. I love it because of all the good resources. Canadian history is something that's very important for our students. Donna Ward is a homeschool book publisher, and she has created an amazing number of resources. There's a documentary, Canada, a People's History, that you can use online. The Story of Canada, a number of good Canadian history books that are interesting to read and can captivate your children's attention. And you don't have to bore them with dates and places. Have students learn real stories when they're studying history, because they will remember one real story way more than being forced to memorize dates and times and events. One good captivating story will do more for you than a month's worth of memorizing dates and times. Lots of good history overview for all of history. And some of these are in audio form as well. So if you would like to be able to put on an audio book for your students to listen to, then some of these are available online. Story of the World, Diana Waring, lots of these are available online, and they're good resources. Again, historical fiction. When I talked about reading, you can do two things at once by reading to your students and reading them historical fiction. That's a wonderful thing, a wonderful way to capture two subjects at once. Geography games. We did most of our geography with games. So 10 days in Asia, 10 days in Europe, 10 days in Africa. You get the picture. The game of Risk. You can learn a lot by using board games. In all of your curriculum, there are math games. There are a multitude of critical thinking games. The options are just expansive when it comes to learning games, to educational games, which can be a really fun way of educating your children. And again, use your local library, use HSLDA, our membership library. And then for the extra pieces of curriculum, physical education. Physical education is very fun in homeschooling. Getting out and running, you can do phys ed independently or with groups of other students. So you can set out some goals for your children, some things you'd like to do daily or weekly or to complete in a year. Music is a subject that many home educators spend significant time on. One thing that you will notice is that the core curriculum requirements don't take anywhere near as long as a whole day to complete. That leaves you with a good portion of the day to work on extra things like music, Bible study, arts, crafts, typing, logic, service work, having your children volunteer, work experience. There are lots and lots of opportunities that your students can take advantage of, a lot more when they're home than when they are in school for 8 hours of the day. You have more time to do these things. This is an example of physical education. So homeschool track meet, real track meet here going on. This is our homeschool badminton group. I coordinated homeschool badminton and homeschool volleyball every year. So these are all home educated kids. We would rent a gym, we would do badminton, we would do volleyball, really fun. So another component is round the house things and life skills. In our household, it was Dad who did many of these things with our kids. Dads can be very involved in your students' learning, the other parents, just building things, doing carpentry with the kids, fixing things around the house is an amazing opportunity for your students to learn. How often are school kids at home when the plumber comes? Well, in homeschooling, they are always there. So they can learn about plumbing with dad, with the plumber. They can learn about electrical things. They can work on your vehicles. They can be involved in agriculture, building gardens, construction, woodworking. That may become something that they're just interested in and that they like doing. Fashion and cosmetology and hospitality. Learning how to be hospitable in your own home is a good skill to learn or to teach our children. So many opportunities. You can take time to talk about careers, to really look at what it means to be a plumber, what it means to be an X-ray technician. If you have older students, you can really do some good career exploration, look at their career readiness. There's a lot of excellent opportunities. Cooking. Have your children get involved in the cooking, the organizing of your home, and your home management. And yes, that means they do the cleaning with you. So that's one of the benefits, but it also is going to need to happen more now that your children are home all the time. So one thing that you can consider too, if the idea of purchasing, all of those individual components or gathering those individual components is a little bit daunting, you could look at all-in-one curriculum packages as well. Classical Conversations will have those, and that comes from a classical perspective. Sunlight has them. There's a number of places where you can get those, which leads me to home education resource providers. We have a list of home education resource providers on our website that you can look at. There's no way I can possibly go through all of the resources that are available, because each of these resource providers will have thousands of items that are available for you to look at. Go under resources and look at the resources that we have available on our website. Developing a plan. I encourage you to develop a plan. The time spent planning now will help make your year much easier. Something that I learned fairly early on in my homeschooling was if I had a plan, it would make the days when I felt like I was pulling my hair out or like I didn't know what to do with my children anymore. It would make those times much easier. And it actually improved my confidence as well in what we were doing. I would have my children leave my home for a complete day or a complete weekend when I developed my plan. I had someone take my children. And at one point, my husband said to me, well, why don't you just go away? And I said, I can't. I need access to all of my stuff to be able to do this well. So I would lay out all my resources on my living room floor, and I would write a plan, pick books, pick things, pick subjects that we wanted to do. I would focus on subjects that we could do together, but develop, slightly more difficult things for kids who are a little bit older, much more difficult things for kids who were way older, and really easy things for the little kids. This picture is a bit of an anomaly. It's one of the few days that my children ever sat at the table like this and worked together. So please do not think that this is a typical homeschooling day necessarily. Sometimes they did, but it didn't always look like this. More often we had some kids on the couch, some kids on the floor, some when they were young, not so much in their bedroom, but as they got older, some of them would prefer to work in their rooms. But I do want to point out a number of things in this photo because I think it's valuable. This is some of the artwork that our children did. So they would do artwork. This child needed help, so she always sat here because there were special reminders for her at this point on the wall. Here is a program plan for this student. Here is the program plan for that student, so that they could easily look at what they were doing. The little one had her own coloring so that she felt like she was a part of what we were doing, even if she really wasn't. And I would find a book for any child who's young so that they can work in it, because if you don't provide them with one, at some point they're going to grab this child's book and he's not going to be happy. So when they have their own schoolwork, they're much happier. And again, go to the dollar store, buy something for fun so that little child has something to do. This one is working on advanced math through this book, and this one is working on grammar. Really lots going on. This is a piece of artwork that we did. You know, there's so much going on in here, and we actually had this space dedicated to our homeschooling because at some point I got really tired of cleaning off the kitchen table every day. So I just left this area for our homeschooling. But you may not have that space, and that's fine. You do what you do in your home. When you're developing your program plan, write out your educational goals that we talked about. Write down those things that you decided were important to you, things that you wanted to work on. Write your plan. I would buy a book. This is any old daily planning book, and I would have one for each child, and I would glue my child's goals or program plan right into it so that they could see it, and even more importantly, so that I could grab their book and see it as well. This is a sample program plan, but I can tell you that what I like to do personally was I like to highlight things when they were done. And I planned out way more stuff than we ever got to. But I personally just loved highlighting something when it was done. It made me just feel good when we could do that. I would write in the margins extra things that we do. And at the end of the year, I just crossed off the things that we never got to. So your plan will look like your plan will look. It doesn't have to be significant, but it's there for you to help you to be focused and to accomplish your goals. Evaluate your student. Monitoring your child's progress is for you to know where they are. It serves you as the parent. You can use the Canadian Test of Basic Skills if you want to do testing, your provincial tests, unit tests. You can simply observe your child and make notes. Keep a portfolio of their work. I encourage you to do that. And keep dated samples of their work. It's important for you to have those evaluative tools and to keep them for records. I also encourage you not to be bound to your curriculum. When things aren't working, adjust your plans. Take a break. Sometimes all you need to do is change things up. Plan a field trip. Have a games day. I'm going to share a day that started out as a horrible day in our homeschooling and ended up being a wonderful day. My children woke up and none of them wanted to work, and none of them were doing anything that I desired for them. And I yelled at them and you have to do your work and none of you are doing anything. And then I stepped back because it was a really bad day. And I went, this is silly. None of us can do this. It was probably February, which is a real difficult time for me in the homeschooling year. And I ended up pulling out games, and we ended up spending the rest of the day just playing games for fun. And that day ended up refreshing us so much. It ended up rebuilding our relationship because I was damaging it that morning. It built our relationship. We had so much fun that day that I can say it's probably one of our significantly memorable days homeschooling. Not because we accomplished lots of stuff, but because we worked on character, my character, and we worked on our children's character, and we took a break from work that was becoming overwhelming so that the next day the kids could approach it and they weren't overwhelmed anymore. It was a very valuable day. So sometimes just taking a break is what you need. Sometimes trying a different approach is important. Have dad try and teach, use a YouTube video. And sometimes you will try a new curriculum. You will try a new way of doing things. Don't be a slave to your curriculum. It's there to serve you, not for you to serve it. Relax, jump in, and reap the benefits of homeschooling because there really are so many. Your children and your relationship will grow, will flourish. Your children's relationships with any other siblings they have will grow and flourish. Relationship building is one of the best parts of homeschooling.